woodcraft, helping you make woodwork.
If it's going to fault. So that's clean enough for what we're doing here, and I probably should have put this in the water too when I put the other one in.
How long does it take to soak up?
Not long. We've been doing this, what, 10 minutes now, and it's fully soaked. I threw a... No, like I said, I start about an hour before I want to use it. I generally, just the way I did it, before I start cleaning, I'll get it all soaking in water, and then if it's too wet, I can always let it sit and dry for a little bit and let it dry. I've never come across a situation where it's too wet. The wetter the better. So it just gives you more flexibility. If you'll notice, we'll pass this around with it. If you'll notice, you can bend that and manipulate it, and this more wants to break. It's not as easily movable and to manipulate than the wet one is.
No, this is the same thing dry.
Same thing dry. That's the same thing dry. I cut it off of that ring, so same thing. And we're going to go through this very rapidly. I'm just going to hit the high points that I think are, you know, things that people should know that you wouldn't typically know unless someone taught you. So now that I've got my piece cut and I've got it soaked in water, there's you can buy wedges that'll help the process, or you can make your own. If you're gonna make your own, you just want to make sure that your wedge is tapered very much like your rib is. You can see the taper on that one. Because what you're going to do is you're going to press the cane down into the groove. And what the wedges do, two things. They help you press it in evenly, and they also help you hold it down while you're working the whole piece. So I've gone ahead and through the years cut many of little wedges, and I just brought some. You can buy them though. They are available to buy. And so you're running this piece that you've already cut and fitted across the top. It's already wet. At this point we would take our glue, which I lost. Since we're working with things that are wet, you always want to use a water resistant glue. Tight Bond, excellent glue for water resistant. I use it on antiques all the time, mainly because it is water resistant. The various colors in this glue are how long it takes to cure, how much work time you have. Blue's pretty moderate. It's not really slow to set up, but it's not really fast either. I believe the red one's pretty fast. Green one might be or the other way around. But that's the difference in the colors with the Tight Bond. So at this time, I would go ahead and I would squirt glue, and I would squirt a fair amount of glue, at least a quarter to half of the channel, and fill it all up with glue. We don't want to miss anything because everything's going to be glued, the cane and the rib. There are no nails, there are no tacks. It's just all about the glue and the pressing. So at this time the glue goes in, and then the cane goes on top. If anybody has ever dealt with any kind of drums or any kind of skin that has to be completely level on top, tight all the way around evenly, caning is the same way. And the way that you accomplish that is you start on one side, doesn't matter, back, front, side, whatever, and you just pound in your wedge moderately. You don't want to give it one big old whack because then it'll break through the cane. And as you can tell, it's pulling towards me. And this is the time that I'm going to line it up. And you can take a tape measure, so you are exact. I tend to use my eye. I don't know why, but I do. And so I'm starting in the back, and my next wedge is going to go directly in front of it. I try really hard to make sure that the solid part of the weaving goes in the groove as much as possible. I don't know if you can see, but I've got the solid line here going across the front of the rib. So that's the part that's going into the rib. And it just helps with tearaways, so you don't have a lot of tearaways. And then you'll do your sides. It is going to be wrinkly. It is going to look like it's not going to conform right. But by the time you work your way all the way around, it conforms itself. So don't worry about the wrinkles at the beginning. It's just part of the process.
Are your wedges made out of softwood?
Mine are pine. Yeah.
Looks like oak.
It doesn't matter what wood you're going to use.
I was just thinking it might give a little bit.
Yeah, so hardwoods are definitely going to give you no give, where your softwoods, good point, are going to give you a lot of give.
Well, that, you know, the older chair, that's going to be a mighty hard wood to work with.
Yeah.
It's not going to give any.
It is. And you don't want the chair to give, to be honest with you. You want everything else to give. One thing that I didn't mention that is incredibly important, if you have a chair that is loose, like this one, you need to tighten it up first. You need to repair the chair. It has to be solid. And then you come in and you do your caning. If you don't, you're going to spend all this time and then your chair is going to fall apart. So then you're doing it again after you fix the chair. So you always want to make sure that your chair is very, very solid, which we're going to have a class in that too. So, and again, bring your own chair type of thing. So now that I've got all 4 points, I'm going to start the process of working the rest of the material around the rib. And it's very simple. You just exactly what you're doing with these blocks right here, except you're just going to work in one continuous motion. I like to work from the back forward. It doesn't really matter. I just like to work from the back forward. So all I'm going to do is start in the middle and just work it down into the groove. I don't necessarily have to have it stay in there. I just want it to mold to the shape of the groove. And if you notice, I am not whacking hard. It is nice, even tapping.
Is a wooden hammer easier to use than a standard old 16-ounce nail hammer?
It is for me. That's all personal preference. There's a bounce motion. I don't know how to explain it. Metal on wood absorbs the bounce. Wood on wood will bounce. So when I'm bouncing in these shims, I like to be able to have a bounce and work the hammer without working my arm or my wrist or my hands. And with metal, you don't get that. The only time I use a metal hammer is when I'm running in nails or whatnot. But if I'm pounding wood, especially when I'm trying to tear something apart, I always use a wooden handle. It doesn't make the tool marks that a metal hammer will. And it's just a nicer cushion. It gives me a bounce. I like to use the bounce. I don't have real great hands, so anytime I can come up with a method to make it a little easier on my hands, I go that direction. And you're working wood. You should use a wood hammer.
If you're going to use a metal hammer, you can use a screen door tool to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. You can. I also have an example with a leather. And this is actually a leather tool hammer for making, designs in leather. But it works really well too. It gives me a good bounce. This one's weighted a little bit more in the head, so I like it better. But something like that would work too. You can use the metal. It's just all about personal preference. It's not going to make the seat any better or any different. being in the antique world, I'm kind of a purist. I like to do things the way they did it back in the day. I don't know why. It's just kind of a little niche I have.
Geek on TV that uses the old tools.
Yeah, that red-headed guy. I like him. Can't remember his name, but I like him.
He's sponsored by Woodcraft.
Is he? Right. I should be sponsored by Woodcraft then. Because I definitely do not use the right tool for the right job. I use the tool that's comfortable for me.
That's the important thing. That's what makes it a craft.
It is. It is. You know, there's always a time or place for the right tool for the right job. But situations like this, you're pounding all day long, or you're stretching rush all day long. If you can come up with something that makes it comfortable for you, go for it. And there is no right or wrong. It'll be one of the rare moments when it's all about you and nobody else. What's comfortable, so. Again, with a rounded corner, you just want a little bit narrower wedge so you can get around that corner. The 90-degree corners are pretty big rounds, so you shouldn't have a problem with just cutting a smaller wedge, 1/4 inch, 3/16 maybe. That's a little technical, but just use a smaller wedge and you'll make the corner okay. For the guys that are up front here, you can notice as I'm tapping this down all the way around, you'll see it getting tighter and tighter. The tightness always takes care of itself if you just work the material and not worry about it being tight. It will always be tight. It will always tighten up on its own. When I first started doing this, that was my biggest hiccup was, oh, it's not tight enough, it's not tight enough. But then in the end, especially after it dries, it is tight enough. It's always tight enough. Once in a while, you'll break a strand. I've got 2 right here. Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. Your rib is going to go in there. There's a lot of little strands. It's still going to keep it nice and tight. If you find that you've broken a couple dozen in one line, then we need to take it away and start again with a fresh piece because it's just too many. It's just going to fall out when you sit on it. But a couple of broken strands, not a big deal. If it wasn't wet, they would all be broken. It would just shatter instead of press into the groove like it's doing.
So does it get dry? Sometimes you take your time?
Yep, if I walk away and go eat lunch,
Throw a towel on.
I have to come back and spray it. But once you get that initial absorption, it'll get wet again really fast. You don't have to soak it.
It's like working leather.
Yes, very much like working leather. Very similar. So, and I have a spray bottle next to me all the time, and I'm always just keeping it wet. Now, with that said, if you have a finish on a chair, obviously this is not a finished chair. I'm not worried about the water, but if you have a finish on a chair, you don't want to get it so wet it's going to bugger up your finish. That takes a lot of time, hours for standing water to bugger up a finish, but it will happen. So that, and when I'm doing a brand new chair or a chair that I'm not going to refinish, I'll wipe the edges down constantly to make sure that I don't get a lot of water standing on it. No finish likes water, no matter what type of product you're using, indoor or outdoor, nothing likes water. What I'm doing is I'm just going through, if I got any standing up higher than the others, I'm just pushing them back down. The nicer that I have this laying in this track right now, the easier it is to get the rib going on. So I'm just